During childbirth, my husband and mother-in-law secretly used the son of the mistress to swap my daughter. I spent my whole life cultivating my son into an excellent family heir and regarded him as the greatest pride of my life. But after he inherited the company, my health became worse and worse. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that I learned the truth. He is not my son. I gave birth to a daughter. While he was enjoying my maternal love, my daughter was suffering. Even for the sake of inheritance, they poisoned me. They couldn't wait to be reunited as a family. I died on the sickbed with resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the time of childbirth. This time, I won't allow anyone to take my daughter away. Cindy, wake up, wake up. The baby's head is already visible. Come on, push harder. A pair of warm hands kept patting my shoulder. Gentle and firm words drilled into my ear, gradually waking up my scattered consciousness. Regular and intense contractions and labor pains hit. I closed my eyes tightly and concentrated on every breath. As time passed, after taking another deep breath, I used all my strength to push. A crisp cry cut through the air. My daughter was born safely. As soon as the daughter was born, she was carried to the operating table by the nurse. The nurse carefully checked her vital signs. After all indicators were normal, the nurse wrapped her up and congratulated me. Congratulations, Miss Cindy. You gave birth to a son. Mother and child are safe. I was shocked and scanned all the medical staff in the delivery room. Everyone was busily doing their own duties in an orderly manner. No one ever questioned why the mother didn't get a look at the child after it was born. Obviously, if the vital signs are normal, skin-to-skin contact between mother and baby can be done. But that nurse was about to take the child away directly. And none of the other medical staff questioned or showed a surprised expression. It seems that the entire medical staff in the delivery room has been bribed. It turns out that in my last life, my daughter was stolen and swapped by the medical staff as soon as she was born. Watching my daughter being taken away helplessly, I hated. But now I am alone and weak. If I speak out to stop it now, I am worried that they will harm me out of guilt. Back in the ward, I remembered that when I left for the last time in my previous life, I was also on a hospital bed. But I didn't die of natural causes. Instead, I was poisoned to death by chronic poison by my good son who I wholeheartedly cultivated and raised to be the family heir. He, his biological mother, and my husband stood by my bed happily and watched me die in agony. I am resentful, I am unwilling, and I am even more guilty towards my own daughter. After being stolen and swapped, she was abandoned in an orphanage and had to be taken care of by the mistress. She suffered in the orphanage overtly and covertly. I was so angry that I vomited a large mouthful of blood and then stopped breathing. God has eyes and actually let me be reborn back to the time of childbirth. In this life, justice will be served. I will definitely help my beastly husband and his white moonlight girlfriend be reunited and let them be in pain together. Despite not having rested, I called the housekeeper. Miss, I was about to bring the confinement nanny and meals to the hospital. But is there anything else? Leo, don't bring the confinement nanny for now. Immediately send someone to the first orphanage to find a baby girl abandoned today and bring her back to the confinement center to take good care of. Then call lawyer Julian for me. Both of these things must be done without letting the son-in-law know, understand? Leo sensed my cautious tone and didn't dare to delay. Okay, Mississippi. I'll do it right away. Lawyer Julian is the person in charge of the legal department of our Cindy Group. He has been serving Cindy Group since my father was alive. Leo has watched me grow up since I was a child and is the person I trust the most. Since my parents died unexpectedly, I brought my mother-in-law to live in the Cindy family villa. Soon after I returned to the ward, my husband Harrison and mother-in-law walked in happily. The two of them kept staring at the baby in the crib and didn't think of caring about me at all. I quietly observed their expressions. Probably sensing my gaze, Harrison finally took a little time from his joy of being a new father to care about me. Cindy, thank you for your hard work. You gave birth to a boy for our family. Mother-in-law chimed in with a smile. Yes, now our Harrison family has an heir. Thank goodness. Son, you are really capable. Hearing his mother's praise, Harrison was a little proud. Then, fearing that I would be unhappy, he quickly attributed the credit to me. Mom, what are you talking about? Of course Cindy is the biggest contributor. Mother-in-law realized that she had said the wrong thing and quickly apologized. Yes, yes. Look, mother-in-law is so happy that she didn't even know she said the wrong thing. Cindy, don't take it to heart. You are the one who deserves the credit in our Harrison family. I looked on coldly and replied indifferently, it doesn't matter. As long as mother-in-law is happy. At this time, there was a knock on the ward door. The person who opened the door was not lawyer Julian himself, but his son Julian, who is also a lawyer. He and I can be considered childhood sweethearts. But he is indifferent in emotions. There has never been a spark between us. On the contrary, it is normal for me to be angered by him until I am fuming. Cindy, congratulations on having a son. I reluctantly accepted his blessing, thank you. Why didn't your father come? Leo directly called me. Probably he thought the person you wanted to see was me. I nodded, it's okay. It doesn't matter who comes, whether it's you or Uncle Julian. Then I said to Harrison and his mother, husband, mother-in-law, I have something important to say to Julian. Please go out. Harrison was a bit dissatisfied, but seeing my serious expression, he had no choice but to go out with his mother obediently. I crooked my finger, and Julian leaned his head over. I pointed at the baby boy in the crib and lowered my voice as I said to him, my child has been switched. After hearing this, Julian stared at me with wide eyes, as if he thought I was joking. The daughter I gave birth to was switched by Harrison. This baby boy is the child of Harrison and his mistress. Julian instantly transformed from disbelief to anger. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to rush out and beat up Harrison. I quickly grabbed him tightly, fearing that the two people outside would hear the commotion. Calm down. Leo has already gone to help me find my daughter. Now I need you to help me sue the hospital and collect evidence against Harrison. But don't alert him. Don't let Harrison know that he has been exposed. Otherwise, if he destroys the evidence, all our efforts will be in vain. When Julian heard that my biological daughter was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief but still didn't understand. Why not expose them directly and divorce him directly? Now Harrison is the vice president of the company and still has countless connections with me. If we rashly tear our faces apart, it will be of no benefit to Cindy's. I am even more unwilling for him to divorce me and take my property and then go and support his mistress and son. Julian stared into my eyes. I thought you still had feelings for him. I snorted coldly. Humph, feelings? Bah. I wish I could drive and run him over right now, throw him downstairs to his death, or poison him to death. Julian, listening to my resentful words, took a step back in fright and sneered. Sure enough, the most poisonous is a woman's heart. I turned my head and ignored him. Adults' joys and sorrows are not shared. He didn't experience the pain I had in my previous life. How could he understand my hatred for Harrison at this moment? The baby boy in the crib let out a cry at the right time. I took one look and then ignored it. Julian was in a flurry and wanted to soothe him but had no effect at all. So he had to open the door and ask the nurse to come in. When the mother-in-law heard her precious grandson crying, she hurriedly wanted to comfort him. At the same time, she was still complaining. Cindy, why hasn't your maternity matron arrived yet? I had an expressionless face. I have already dismissed the maternity matron. What? I still don't trust outsiders to take care of the child. During the confinement period, it will be hard on you, mother-in-law. The mother-in-law stared in disbelief. Since I got married to Harrison, their family has achieved a leap across classes and has never been tired for a day since then. Suddenly being asked to take care of the child, she must be extremely reluctant in her heart, even if it is her own grandson. The mother-in-law still wanted to fight for it. Harrison saw that my expression was not right and planned to talk to me later. So he stopped his mother. Seeing that Harrison and his mother were still there, Julian couldn't continue discussing what had just happened with me and planned to leave. I'm relieved to see that you gave birth safely. I'll go back and tell Dad. You have a good rest. Call me if you need anything. I nodded at him. Once again, only the four of us were left in the ward. Harrison asked with concern. Cindy, are you too tired from giving birth? Why don't you sleep for a while? We will watch the child. You can rest assured. We can talk about anything after you have rested. Just as I didn't want to act in front of them anymore, I turned my back, pulled the quilt over, and went to sleep. But even with my eyes closed, I couldn't fall asleep. Listening to Harrison speaking softly to his mother, fearing to disturb me. I couldn't help but think of the years I spent with him. At first, the excellent him didn't care about me at all. So I was like a rich young lady in a TV drama who fell in love with a poor boy. I admired his lofty pride and independence and enterprising spirit. After chasing him hard for 3 years in college, finally, at graduation, he agreed to be my boyfriend. When we were in love, he was like a different person. He was extremely considerate to me. After entering the company, he was even more aggressive and respectful and took care of my parents. I was still glad that I had found a husband who was self-disciplined. Unlike those central air conditioners who showed concern to everyone. Now thinking about it, I want to slap myself twice. Giving birth consumed a lot of energy. As I was thinking like this, I fell asleep. When I woke up, Leo was already sitting in the ward. I nervously waited for Leo's reply. But because of Harrison and his mother, he couldn't reply to me directly. He just looked at me with comforting eyes and nodded heavily. Knowing that my daughter was safely rescued, I was so excited that tears couldn't be controlled and fell down. Harrison came over affectionately and put his arm around my shoulder. Why are you crying all of a sudden? Yes. Crying during confinement is very likely to cause confinement diseases. The mother-in-law also chimed in. Leo came out to smooth things over. I heard that after a woman gives birth, under the influence of that hormone, her emotions fluctuate greatly. If not careful, it is very easy to get postpartum depression. Young master, you must take good care of our young lady. Harrison knew Leo's position in our family and generally agreed with what he said. Fearing that I might have postpartum depression, he tightly held my shoulder. Silly girl, don't think too much. In my heart, you are still the most important. Just tell me whatever you need. Whether you want to vent or calm down, I will cooperate. With tears in my eyes, I looked at this gentle and considerate husband in front of me with pursed lips, but I couldn't feel a bit of emotion. All I could think of was his malicious words in front of my hospital bed in my previous life. Bitch, I've been looking forward to your death for a long time. As long as you die, Cindy's will belong to me and my son. How does it feel to see the company you worked so hard to manage finally fall into the hands of me and Vivian's son? All the mistakes are because of you. If it weren't for you breaking up me and Vivian and forcing me to be with you by coercion and bribery, Vivian and I wouldn't need to be together secretly. The vicious Harrison in my mind overlapped and separated from the caring and concerned look in front of me, making me dizzy. After pushing him away with difficulty, I held onto the bedside railing and retched. Harrison was at a loss and quickly went out to call the nurse. When the nurse came in to check, I took the opportunity to send Harrison and his mother out. Husband, I feel nauseous and uncomfortable. I want to eat something sour. Can you go out and buy some for me? Also, I was admitted to the hospital in a hurry and didn't bring enough clothes. Please trouble mother-in-law to go home and get some for me. After all, they are personal clothes. Leo is not convenient to bring them for me. After the nurse checked me and went out, only Leo and I were left in the ward. Knowing that I was anxious, Leo quickly took out his phone, clicked on a video and handed it to me. In the picture, a little person huddled up. From her red cheeks, it could be seen that she had been crying hard for a long time. At the thought that my own flesh and blood had encountered such a situation just after being born, my heart ached as if cut by a knife. 05 Leo, is this baby alright? Looking at my heartbroken appearance, Leo had already guessed roughly. Miss, don't worry. The doctor at the confinement center has examined and everything is normal. She just caught a little cold. They will take good care of her. I returned the phone to Leo and let out a sigh. That's good. Later, please take saliva samples from the 3 of us. Compare the genes of me and these two children, as well as Harrison and this baby boy. After the results come out, give them to Julian. Leo carefully wrapped the cotton swab samples with saliva from me and the baby boy respectively, took away the paper cup that Harrison had drunk water from, comforted me for a while and then left. Julian sent a message at this time: I have collected the identity information of all the medical staff who delivered you. Just wait for your test report and I will file a lawsuit against the hospital. Okay, thanks for your hard work. If you are polite to me, I will help you change a lawyer to represent you. Julian is like this. His words are always hard. He can't say a soft word to girls. No wonder he couldn't find a wife all his last life. I know. Leo will be responsible for giving you the test report. The child is in the confinement center. If you have time, please go and see for me. Julian didn't reply anymore. After deleting the chat record, I also rested at ease. After waking up, Harrison and my mother-in-law all returned to the ward. In order to have a reasonable foreshadowing for suing the hospital later, after getting up, I stared at Vivian's child in a daze. Suddenly I burst into terrified cries, "Husband, husband! This is not our child. This is not. Our child is missing." Harrison was shocked. Afraid that I had discovered something, he showed a distressed look and walked to my bedside in a loss. "Cindy, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm here. This is our child." "Why do you suddenly say that?" I was in tears. "Husband, I had a nightmare. I dreamed that our child was stolen by someone." Harrison lowered his head. His eyes were gloomy and unclear. In an instant, he resumed his distressed look. "Silly, there are always people in the hospital. Leo just left and we arrived immediately after. There is no chance for a thief to steal your child. Look at the child's appearance. It has always been like this. Look at the photos I took this morning." I hurriedly took the phone, held it tightly with trembling hands, and put it next to the crib for careful comparison. I looked at Harrison and burst into laughter through tears. "It's our son." "That's right." Harrison lovingly touched my head. "You are really too tired. You take a dream seriously. Don't think wildly. Husband is always here with you and your child." Then he winked at his mother. His mother nodded knowingly and left the ward. Harrison fed me porridge. I made an excuse for him to buy some more fruits. After he went out, I turned around and poured all the food he brought into a bag and hid it. Lying on the hospital bed, I closed my eyes and pretended to breathe deeply. Feeling Harrison coming back, he tiptoed closer and looked at me. Then he quickly walked into the bathroom in the ward and made a phone call. 06 Vivian, with my mother here, you should be obedient and have a good confinement. I still expect you to recover and give me a daughter. Humph, how can the child born by that bitch be worthy of being my daughter? Got it. I will arrange for someone to talk to the welfare home later. That child cannot be adopted." I took out my phone and pressed the recording button, listening quietly to his conversation with Vivian. I clenched my fist in resentment, my knuckles turned white, and I didn't even know that my nails had dug into my palm. "It's okay. Our son is fine with me. Don't worry." "Yes." After taking the medicine I gave her, she fell asleep deeply. "I miss you so much that I secretly called you." Hee hee, that bitch now completely trusts me. I will slowly give her medicine and let her body gradually collapse. Soon Cindy's will be ours for a family of 3. Be good. I miss you too. I will go to see you as soon as I have time. You have a good rest. I'll hang up first. I suddenly pressed the recording save button, stuffed the phone under the pillow, loosened my fist, and continued to pretend to be asleep. Scumbag and bitch, I must make you pay for what you have done. After a while, I woke up slowly. I took out my phone from under the pillow and immediately sent the just recorded audio to Julian. At the same time, Julian also sent me several photos and videos. Sure enough, he went to see my daughter. The last video is the most wonderful. It is actually the surveillance video outside the welfare home. In the picture, a middle-aged woman sneaked up to the gate of the welfare home, put down a baby in swaddling clothes, and quickly slipped away secretly while covering her face. But that figure and dress are undoubtedly my good mother-in-law. Move the saved photos and videos into the confidential folder and delete the chat record as usual. As soon as the genetic test report came out, Leo didn't dare to delay for a moment and immediately transferred it to Julian. I had to perform the act of questioning the authenticity of the child every day in the hospital, which directly led to my poor mental state. Harrison was worried that I would do something bad after being discharged from the hospital. Therefore, he proposed that I continue to receive examinations in the hospital. On this day, Julian came to see me as agreed. I cried and pulled his clothes. Julian, I am very painful. Every night I dream that my own flesh and blood is looking for its mother. This child is not my baby. It must be a mistake by the hospital. Help me. Will you help me? Harrison reached out and put his arm around me, forcing me to pull away from Julian. Cindy, listen to me. This is our son. It must be that you are having hallucinations due to hormonal influences after giving birth. It will be fine after it passes. I will be with you. Julian watched me struggling and denying continuously, crying hoarsely. Frowning, he said, Cindy, don't be afraid. I will take the babies and your genes for testing. The results will come out soon. Then you can also dispel your doubts. What do you think? I was like a drowning person who found a life buoy. I reached out and desperately tried to grab Julian's clothing corner and nodded repeatedly. Okay. Do the test. I agree to do the test. Harrison blurted out and shouted, I don't agree. 07 Julian and I turned our heads in surprise and looked at Harrison. He probably realized that he had lost his composure and quickly explained. What I mean is that it's fine if I do the test with the baby. Cindy has just given birth and is weak. She is not suitable for testing. It's the same if I do it. I am the baby's father. Can't do a genetic test due to weakness after giving birth? This reason without common sense. If it weren't for my good acting skills, I really couldn't hold back. Julian desperately tried not to laugh. His face was about to turn red. Based on his professional qualities, he generally doesn't laugh unless he can't help it. He held back his laughter and turned his head away, tightly pursing his lips. After a moment of silence, Julian coughed lightly. Nowadays, genetic testing can be done by just taking hair with hair follicles or saliva. So it won't have any impact on Cindy and the baby's bodies. It's not that it's not okay for you to do it. But given Cindy's current state, I'm afraid that if she doesn't do it herself, she still won't be able to completely dispel her doubts. Harrison's face immediately lost all color. His mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. Probably he couldn't find a reason to refute Julian. Seeing that he didn't respond, Julian cut the Gordian knot. He took a cotton swab from the table beside the hospital bed. I opened my mouth and let him take my saliva. Then he took a cotton swab and also took saliva from the baby boy's mouth. Harrison stood up and still wanted to make a last-ditch effort to stop Julian. I took the opportunity to ask in confusion, Honey, is there a problem? If you are not be relieved, we can all three of us do a comparison. As soon as I said this, Harrison's face turned even paler. He stammered and refused. No, there's no need. You can do it. If I also do it, then wouldn't I become someone who doubts you? I trust you absolutely. I sneered inwardly while still making a touched expression. Honey, I trust you too. But when I look at this child, I always feel strange and scared. I'm wondering if there's a possibility that the hospital made a mistake and mixed up my child. Harrison raised his hand and gently stroked my hair. Silly, if the test can make you feel at ease, then do it. Nothing is more important than you. With tears in my eyes, I said, Honey, thank you. Julian watched us, this pair of best actor and actress, coldly and shook his head gently, preparing to leave the ward. I winked at him and said, By the way, help me take out the trash and throw it away. Unexpectedly, as soon as Julian left, Harrison followed right after. Your good husband is following me. It seems that he wants to influence the testing agency. It's okay. The test report can be obtained tomorrow. With that surveillance video, neither my mother-in-law nor the hospital can get away. Taking advantage of the fact that there was no one else in the ward, I couldn't help but take out my phone to check the surveillance of the maternity center. My precious daughter, in a few more days, Mom will be reunited with you. 08 In the hospital conference room, I held the genetic test report with trembling hands and asked the person in charge of the medical affairs department hoarsely. Tell me, where is my child? Leo from the medical affairs department and the chief of obstetrics looked at each other, feeling uneasy. The air was filled with an uneasy silence and my full of resentment. Leo opened his mouth several times but couldn't utter a word. Miss Cindy, this. Regarding the investigation of the situation where Miss Cindy's child was swapped, our law firm has started the investigation work as soon as we received the commission. You too. Harrison kept comforting me as I sobbed nonstop. Julian beside me sat up straight and calmly pushed his glasses. Regarding the investigation of the situation where Miss Cindy's child was swapped, our law firm has started the investigation work as soon as we received the commission. You too can take a look. This is the surveillance video outside the hospital on that day at dawn. At that time, this Miss Cheen, that is, Mr. Harrison's mother, hurriedly left the hospital holding a swaddling baby. Half an hour later, she came to the outside of the welfare home holding the swaddling baby, put it down and left. Julian pushed the tablet in front of them. As soon as he mentioned that Harrison's mother was related to this matter, Harrison beside him immediately stiffened, gasped, and looked at me with an incredulous expression. Julian ignored him and continued to make requests. We have reasonable evidence to show that someone in your hospital colluded with Ms. Cheen and swapped Ms. Cindy's own flesh and blood with a baby boy. Julian's voice was not loud but every word was clear, carrying an undeniable power. Leo and the chief tightly pursed their lips. Their throats seemed to be blocked by something and they found it hard to speak. Based on this fact, we need to ask the hospital to disclose the delivery room video when Ms. Cindy gave birth. If the hospital has something difficult to say, we can obtain it by calling the police. As soon as we mentioned calling the police, Leo nervously sat up straight. Our hospital will give a reasonable explanation internally for this matter. If it is found that it is indeed our hospital's responsibility, we will definitely handle it impartially. Julian's oppressive voice sounded. Thank you very much for the hospital's cooperation. But please let Leo give an investigation deadline. Leo swallowed hard. 3 days. The people present fell silent one after another. 2 days. I will give the investigation results of this accident to Miss Cindy within 2 days. Julian showed a satisfied smile and took out his business card and handed it to Leo. Thank you for your hard work, Leo. I am Miss Cindy's representative lawyer. Please contact me after you have the results. Thank you. Having obtained the desired answer, I returned to the ward with Harrison's support. The baby boy had been returned to the hospital for care. Without seeing the ungrateful person, I felt that the air was fresh. 09 Julian told me to rest well and then left. As soon as the door was closed, Harrison anxiously took my hand and apologized. Cindy, I really don't know why my mother would take a child to the welfare home. When I go back and ask her clearly, don't worry first. Don't be sad. We will definitely find our own child. With tear stains on my face, I looked at him wearily and didn't want to say a word. I listlessly pulled out my hand held by him and lay on the bed with my back to him. No matter how he comforted me, I remained indifferent. He helplessly left a sentence. Cindy, you have to believe me. I will always be the same to you. Have a good rest. Filtering out his disgusting words, I adjusted my breathing and calmed myself down. These days of acting, true and false, have made me physically and mentally exhausted. I need to have a good sleep. There are still many things waiting for me. After such a major incident of baby swapping, the hospital didn't dare to relax and investigated the truth nonstop, fearing that a long delay would cause a great uproar. On the second day of the meeting, Leo notified Julian to come and personally came to my ward to explain the incident to me. My good mother-in-law took everything on herself. She took the initiative to confess that she had spent a large sum of money to bribe the medical staff who delivered me and asked them to swap my daughter with the boy of her fellow townsman. Of course, that fellow townsman is Vivian. She also confessed that the baby boy born to Vivian is hers and Harrison's. My mother-in-law favors sons over daughters. In order for her eldest grandson to have a better environment to grow up in, she cruelly swapped the two children born around the same time. Afraid of being discovered by me, she simply threw my daughter in the welfare home. After telling the truth, my mother-in-law went to the Public Security Bureau to turn herself in, accompanied by Harrison. Leo lowered his head and said guiltily, "Miss Cindy, I'm very sorry. When we learned the whereabouts of your daughter, we went to the welfare home immediately to pick up the child. But the welfare home said that the child had been adopted. Such a thing has indeed exposed loopholes in our hospital. We have suspended the relevant personnel and transferred their information and monitoring and other evidence to the public security organs, waiting for further processing by the procuratorial organs. We deeply apologize for the harm caused to you by this accident. Here is 500,000 yuan. Please accept it. It can be regarded as a little compensation from our hospital to you. We will still continue to help you find your daughter." I reached out to take the check and handed it to Julian. "Donate it to the welfare institution for me." Then I said to Leo, "I have already found my daughter, so you don't need to worry about it." As soon as Leo heard this, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. After repeatedly apologizing, he left the ward. 10. Help me go through the discharge procedures as soon as possible. I want to be reunited with my child in the confinement center. Julian nodded after putting away the check. Leo is already waiting for you downstairs. The car is at the main entrance. I will handle the remaining luggage and procedures. You can go first. After leaving a thank you, I left without looking back. I only hoped that the car would drive faster and faster. The short 30-minute journey seemed like a lifetime to me, filled with mixed feelings when approaching home. Standing outside the suite door, I was both nervous and expectant. "You knew on the first day that the child wasn't yours? Why?" I was obviously very thorough. Too lazy to nag with him, I resolutely hung up the phone and clicked to add it to the blacklist. The whole set of actions was smooth. Julian let me fiddle with his phone. "The recording you sent me, the test report of the food sample you asked me to take away, and the genetic test report of Harrison and his son have all been sorted out by me. Just wait for you to put forward the specific requirements of the divorce agreement, and I can start drafting it. I have only one requirement. I want Harrison to have nothing and make him pay the price for what he has done." Julian smiled. Resolute enough. I like it. Hearing his double meaning, I could only pretend to be deaf and ignore it. At this time, my daughter cried. This guy was even more nervous than me and rushed over to pick her up and soothe her. "Darling, don't be afraid. Uncle Julian is here. No one can bully you and your mother. Don't worry." Watching him patting my daughter gently and coaxing her to sleep softly, the corners of my mouth unconsciously rose. I forcefully shook off those absurd thoughts in my head and reached out to take my daughter. "Go and get busy. There are a bunch of things waiting for you." "Okay. On your company side, Secretary has given me the financial transaction data related to Harrison. I am hurrying to find problems and then call the police." 12. Enduring humiliation and pretending to be mysterious for several days is just to make Harrison let down his guard. The company's audits over the years have not found any problems with Harrison. He must be very meticulous. If I can't find evidence of him in the accounts, then I will use the evidence of him poisoning me to deal with him. I stayed in the confinement center at ease with my daughter and was also having a good rest, thinking of making up for the exhaustion of the previous few days. But after only 2 days of peace, the front desk of the confinement center directly contacted me. "Miss Cindy, a Mr. Harrison said that he is your legal husband and asked us to let him in to see you. It came faster than I expected. Let him wait for me in the reception room on the first floor. I'll go down to see him." I instructed the confinement nurse that no one could open the door except me. I picked up my phone, turned on the recording, and went down to the reception room. Cindy. As soon as he saw me, Harrison stared at me with eager eyes. His good-looking eyebrows were knitted tightly and his eyes were filled with tears. I indifferently ignored his performance and sat down opposite him on my own. Cindy, I know I was wrong. I officially broke up with Vivian. I will never see her again. I will only take care of you and your daughter wholeheartedly. Oh, there's no need. I don't have the habit of recycling garbage. Since Harrison and I have been together, I have never treated him with such an attitude. He is also a vice president respected by everyone in the company. After being humiliated by my words, he showed anger on his face for a moment. We have had so many years of relationship and we even have such a lovely child. How can you give up so easily? I really made a mistake for a moment. Please forgive me once for the sake of the child, okay? A momentary mistake. Then was your deliberate poisoning of Cindy also a momentary mistake? As a man, I feel ashamed for you. Julian came to me in a fierce manner, stood close to me, and stared at Harrison fiercely. What? What poisoning? I don't know what you're talking about. Julian snorted coldly, and then took out a stack of inspection reports from his briefcase. The evidence is conclusive and you can't deny it. The police are already waiting for you outside. As soon as Harrison heard this, he wanted to run away. He yanked the door open and was about to rush out. As soon as his foot stepped across the door frame, he was subdued by the police comrades outside. Don't move. We are now arresting you on suspicion of intentional injury. Come back with us and cooperate with the investigation. Harrison, whose movements were controlled, turned his head and looked at me and Julian sinisterly. You two bitches, I won't let you go. Be careful. Julian said coldly, if you don't want to add another charge of intimidation, then shut up. Julian and I walked back to the room side by side. Looking down at the toes of the two of us, I said softly, fortunately, you appeared in time. You know it. Harrison can even do things like switching children and poisoning you. He has long lost his humanity. How dare you meet him alone? Are you not afraid of dying? I pulled the corner of my mouth and gave him a helpless look. The good atmosphere was ruined by this person again. But I'm fine now. Why are you so fierce? You're fine now because you're lucky and the police arrived in time. Otherwise what? Otherwise, you can see the famous scene of me beating up the scumbag. I couldn't help but laugh. Lawyer Julian, are you planning to break the law knowingly? Don't worry. I naturally have a way to get out. Otherwise, I would have been a lawyer for nothing. I know you're formidable, but for such garbage, it's not worth your doing it yourself. Now he and my mother-in-law have both been arrested. Only Vivian is left. Julian said, it seems that your assistant has reported to you? I nodded. Yes. Harrison opened a bidding agency company in Vivian's name outside. He used his position convenience to require the departments under his supervision to select this bidding agency company to carry out bidding and also accepted benefits from bidding companies. No wonder your company's audit department hasn't found his tricks all these years. It turns out that he is amassing wealth outside in his own name. Julian said indifferently, this still has something to do with you. I was puzzled. What does this have to do with me? If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. You are blind yourself. Can the people below not be blind? I nudged him with my elbow. Will you die if you don't tease me once? If I don't tease you in the future in exchange for a wish, would you be willing? The air suddenly became quiet, leaving only the footsteps of the two people and the thumping heartbeats of each other. This deal doesn't know if it conforms to economic benefits for me. I need time to consider it. Julian understood my concerns and didn't ask any more questions. After sighing softly, he changed the topic. Have you thought of a name for my goddaughter? Lena. I hope she will have joy and peace in this life. Good name. As her godfather, I will definitely protect her and let her be happy all her life and be safe all her life. And there's me, her biological mother. Then together. I don't mind. I gave him a look helplessly and walked into the room together. On the day I left the confinement center, Julian came over early to help me pack up. We were just waiting for Lena to finish taking her full moon photos and then set off home. The photographer skillfully posed Lena in various postures. She was very cute. Finally, it was time for me and Lena to take a group photo. Seeing Julian standing behind the photographer, I suddenly had an impulse. Does Godfather want to come and take a photo together? Julian quickly put down the things in his hands. After quickly arranging his hair and clothes, he ran to our side. Seeing his delighted look, I could hardly hold back my laughter. I wore a standard toothy smile. Lena was sleeping obediently in my arms. I whispered to Julian, who was already beside himself with joy. It's just a whim. Don't think about anything else. What I think is none of Cindy's business. Leo personally came to the confinement center to pick us up. The four of us happily went home. Just outside the villa area, a woman holding a baby blocked our car. After seeing us stop, she began to kneel and kowtow excitedly while holding the baby. Soon, a crowd gathered around. Julian planned to get out of the car to find out the situation. I held him back. She's here for me. When dealing with women, you're not as good as me. After getting out of the car, I stood beside the car. If you continue to make a scene like this, there's no need for us to talk. When Vivian heard my oppressive tone, she quickly stood up with the child in her arms and walked up to me. Say it. What do you want after going to so much trouble to find me? Vivian had dark circles under her eyes, with disheveled hair and sallow skin. It was obvious that she had been on the run and was exhausted during this period. I know that I and Harrison have hurt you, but please, for the sake of Harrison having such a young child, let him go, okay? People around began to talk in an uproar. Vivian's pitiful appearance won everyone's sympathy, and they began to point fingers at me. I had always been disdainful of such gossip, but I was not happy to see Vivian succeed. So I raised my voice and said with a choked voice, when you left my daughter at the gate of the welfare home, did you think about how young she was? She was only 1 day old. You and my husband switched him with your son and directly left her at the welfare home. If she hadn't been saved by kind-hearted people by sheer luck, would she still be alive today? As soon as this explosive plot came out, the public opinion of the masses instantly turned one-sided. Some just ants even stepped forward and loudly accused her, looking at you holding the child and looking pitiful, I thought you were being bullied. I didn't expect you to be such a vicious mistress. That's right. It's already bad enough to destroy someone else's family. But you still want to harm the child of the original wife. You're really worse than a beast. The successive scoldings made Vivian gradually lose emotional control. She shook her head and backed away. Suddenly, she let out a scream, stuffed the child to an ant in the crowd, and rushed madly towards a truck driving on the road. With a bang, Vivian was knocked down to the ground. The truck driver hurriedly got out of the car to check. The people around let out exclamations. Miss, are you okay? Vivian lay on the ground as if she had lost all vitality. I was shocked to see this scene and my mind suddenly went blank. Julian hurriedly got out of the car. One hand was on my shoulder and the other hand was calling the police. The police and ambulance came very quickly. The medical staff quickly provided first aid to Vivian. But due to the great impact force, her head was hit and she died on the spot. The scene was cordoned off and waited for the funeral home's vehicle to come. The aunt holding the child walked tremblingly to the side of the police, lifted her chin and said, Comrade policeman, this child is hers. What should we do now? The policeman looked at the baby in the swaddling clothes, sighed in pity and then took the child. The remaining policemen on the scene took our statements in turn. Soon the funeral home's vehicle arrived. After the policemen finished taking the statements and cleared the scene, they let us leave. After getting in the car, Julian looked at me worriedly. Cindy, are you okay? Your face looks so ugly. I turned my head and looked quietly out of the window. I'm fine. You arrange for someone to notify Harrison in the detention center. Harrison's case was investigated very smoothly. Before I got out of confinement, the police had already searched Cindy's home and Vivian's home. The police recovered his WeChat chat records and confirmed the fact that he purchased chronic poison through illegal channels and added it to my food. It was soon transferred to the court for trial. On the day of the court trial, Julian accompanied me. When Harrison saw me appear, his calm face immediately showed a fierce expression and seemed to want to rush over. "It's you. It's you who killed Vivian." The bailiffs firmly controlled him, and the presiding judge was also warning him. But he didn't care and was still struggling desperately. Julian pursed his lips tightly and clenched his fist, as if worried that he would really rush over. "Defendant, if you don't calm down, I will convict you of disrupting court order and punish you according to law." The bailiffs had been talking to him, and he gradually calmed down. Subsequently, the court trial proceeded smoothly. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison for several crimes including attempted intentional homicide, misappropriation of company property and abandonment. After the court trial ended, Julian immediately submitted my divorce application from Harrison to the court. The staff of the court found me and said that Harrison was emotionally agitated and requested to meet me. After going through relevant approval procedures, they came to consult my wishes now. I also wanted to hear what else he had to say to me. Julian accompanied me to meet him. As soon as the door of the meeting room was opened, Harrison rushed towards the glass in the middle and kept patting it. "It's all my fault no matter what. I have received due punishment. Can you please let my mother and my child go?" I sneered. "You all come to beg me to let you go. Did you ever think about letting our mother and daughter go at the beginning? Besides, now it's not a question of whether I let you go or not. You have committed a crime. Naturally, there is law to punish you. There is no need for me to let you go or not." Harrison burst into tears. "Yes, I was wrong. Then can I beg you to save my child?" I lowered my head, was silent for a few seconds, then raised my head. My eyes were sharp and firm. "I am not a saint. I can't save your child. He is staying well in the welfare home now and doesn't need to be saved." Then I said angrily, "Why, my daughter can grow up in the welfare home, but your child can't." Harrison slumped powerlessly on the chair and covered his face and cried bitterly. I stood up and looked at this man I once loved deeply. "Because of your greed and viciousness, you killed Vivian and hurt us. In prison, you should reflect on your sins well." The court's divorce judgment came out on Lena's 100th day. When I got the judgment, Julian was even happier than me. On this day, we invited a photographer to our home to take pictures of Lena to record. Julian still stood behind the photographer as usual, but his expectant eyes couldn't be hidden. I waved at him. He rushed over and took Lena and sat down next to me. "Last time it was on a whim. What's it this time?" I smiled and said, "This time it can be on a whim." "Ha ha ha." Julian immediately felt teased by me. One hand was holding Lena, and the other hand reached over and hugged my waist tightly. "No, this time it's called wish fulfillment." I pretended to be ignorant and asked, "What wish?" "You know. Anyway, I won't tease you any more in the future. I will also protect you, take care of you, and love Lena. Is this deal economically beneficial now?" With a faint smile on the corner of my mouth and my eyebrows curved like a crescent moon, I said, "It's a deal." Julian's eyes were dancing with light, and a bright smile bloomed on his face as he turned to look at me. The photographer pressed the shutter, and happiness was frozen at this moment. 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 Frozen at this moment.